Honestly, it doesn't matter if you're a pro or if you just like to take casual photos of your friends and family, because these 5 photography tips will give your photos so much depth and dimension. Me personally, I shoot a lot of street, landscape, and product photography, and I try to apply these strategies to everything I do. My first tip is to think in threes. This is a filmmaking concept that really enhances photography as well. And at the most basic level, you can look at it like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we're gonna apply this to both time and space. Let me explain. So let's say you're gonna hit the streets and get a few photos of a popular landmark or tourist destination. Take some time and snap a few photos of the incoming train or the taxi that's gonna pick you up. These shots will represent the beginning of your journey. It could be as simple as just getting a few shots of yourself eating breakfast or packing your camera gear, etc. After you arrive at your destination and get the main shots that you set out for, then hang around and get a few shots as the sun is going down and some blue hour shots as well. This will show the progression of time. As for space, it means getting 3 shots of everything you shoot. First would be a wide shot using something like a 24mm, which shows the environment and helps establish where you are. Then you'll need your medium shots using a 35mm or a 50mm. And lastly, some tight shots using something like a 85mm for close-up details and textures. And the reason I recommend always including a few shots of yourself while using the camera is because this helps answer 2 very common questions. Who was the photographer? And what camera or lens was used? And if you want to know which cameras and lenses I recommend, check the links in the video description below. The next tip is to add layers and veils. Your shot composition will be so much more interesting when there's an element of mystery and intrigue, which you can easily add by simply shooting through things. You can use windows, doors, keyholes, fences, crowds, anything really. Even something as simple as shooting through some foliage can make a boring scene come to life. And sometimes if there isn't anything to shoot through, I'll just place something in front of my lens. And this could be literally anything. A glass, a plant, your phone, or even just your fingers. Just get creative with it and experiment. Next we have bokeh or no-keh. When we first get into photography, many of us have the tendency to want to shoot everything at a fast aperture like f2.8, trying to get as much background blur as possible. Now let me be the first to say, I love me some bokeh, but as I've gained experience, I've learned that there's a time and a place for everything. Throwing out the background is great when the subject you're focusing on is a single person or a single object. Not only is it beautiful, but you can make a messy or uninteresting background melt away in the sea of bokeh. But anytime you're shooting a scene that has multiple elements, you may ruin your image if you don't stop down to f4 or even f8. And I know it might hurt just even thinking about that. But photos of city blocks, landscapes, architecture, or portraits that have multiple people in them are some instances where it's better to go with no-keh. Shooting those type of shots with shallow depth of field isn't a good idea because you need everything to be sharp and then focus. Don't let your bokeh addiction ruin your images. By the way, I came across this inexpensive software called Vibrance that turns your still images into moving masterpieces. You can go from this to this with just a few clicks. It's amazing for product photos or really any images that you want to post online. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to check it out. My next tip is called larger than life. So you know how sometimes you've taken a photo of something super epic? It could be a humongous waterfall, an extremely tall skyscraper, or a majestic mountain peak. Then when you get home and look at the images, you don't get that awe-inspiring feeling of how large and grand the scene actually was. This is very common. But thankfully, there's a simple technique which adds story to the photo while helping to illustrate the sheer size of the subject you were capturing. What you can do is place an object or a person in the shot as a reference to give the viewer a better understanding of what it felt like to be there. If the lighting is right, sometimes the person can just be a silhouette, which looks pretty amazing. In lighting conditions where the person is well lit, it's better if they have clothing color that contrasts against the rest of the photo. This will really make the image pop. The next tip is called invisible camera. A common problem when shooting street photography or really any type of photos where there's people in the frame, is that people act different when they're aware of the camera. This makes it challenging to capture moments in everyday life. If you're standing there pointing a camera, naturally, it's going to make people self-conscious. But if you set up your camera on a tripod and use zone focusing, where you know that everything within a particular distance is going to fall into focus, then all you have to do is quietly sit down somewhere a few feet away from your camera and use your phone to trigger the shot. People are much less intimidated by a camera sitting on a tripod that doesn't have a cameraman behind it, because it looks like the camera's at rest. Pretty much all camera manufacturers offer a free app that can change the settings of your camera as well as trigger the shot. The only other thing you'll need is a tripod, which is a must-have anyway. I've used all sorts of tripods, and I most definitely recommend the ones with the clamps as opposed to the twisty things. The twisty ones take too long to set up, and they're real quirky as well. My favorite tripod is this one from Benro, and my favorite travel tripod is this one from Neewer. And I'll leave links in the description to both of these tripods, as well as my favorite cameras and lenses. And if you like the colors on a lot of the photos that I showed you in this video, make sure to check out my Filmic LUT Pack and Lightroom profiles available on my website. So I hope that using these tips will help you get some amazing images. But keep in mind that a lot of the final result happens in the edit. And that's why I highly suggest you watch this video next, where I talk about 5 reasons why you might want to use Luminar Neo to edit your photos as opposed to Adobe Lightroom. I appreciate you watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. It's Fulan Creative, and I'm out. Peace.